This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Welcome back to Success in Excess, the podcast where we dig into the journeys of legal leaders who don't just succeed, they build impact, scale with purpose, and transform lives along the way. I'm your host, Tarun Singh, founder of GrowthX, America's #1 law firm marketing agency. We've won that award in 2023, 2024, and we're nominated to win in 2025. With over $120 million in revenue generated for our clients, that's trackable revenue, not pipeline value, we empower law firms to become powerhouses in their field, in their market, whether it's local, regional, or national. We are the guys that are out there in the grind, day in and day out, making sure firms just like yours not only succeed, but succeed with style and class. And what that means is success. Success measured by finance, success measured by community growth, and success measured by overall exponential results. Our guest today is someone who has turned her passion for immigration into a leading boutique practice serving clients across all 50 states and around the globe. She's fluent in Spanish with a certification from Spain. She started in large law firms before stepping out in 2009 to launch Nero Immigration Law in Coral Gables, Florida, and has since become a trusted name in business immigration, family immigration, naturalization, and non-immigrant visas. She's known for her individualized service, high success rate, and her advocacy for immigrant rights. Please welcome Deirdre D. Nero Esquire. I mean, guys, realistically, at the end of the day, Deirdre is a trendsetter. She's changing how immigration law operates, and she makes sure that each one of her clients are given dedicated service custom to their situation. Whether you're an investor looking to invest in the United States and you need a visa, or you're working along the lines of going for a higher education, or you're just coming for the American dream, Deirdre Nero is who you need by your side when it comes to immigration law. Hear in, hear out. Hey everybody, welcome Deirdre Nero of Nero Immigration to the GrowthX Podcast, Success in Excess. Deirdre is not only well known in the South Florida market, she's a powerhouse in the immigration field. She's known for her individualized service, high success rate, and her advocacy for immigration clients. Please welcome Deirdre D. Nero Esquire. Deirdre, thank you for coming on the show. Tell us how you got started.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Wow. Okay. Well, that's going back. So I've been doing this for 22 years. So it's going back quite a bit, but I was always interested in working with international clientele, but I didn't really know what that would mean as a lawyer. So in law school, I was kind of trying all of the different classes that had anything international in the title. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like that one. And I just wasn't finding something that really was kind of clicking for me and feeling like it was like I had found kind of like my calling. And then I took the immigration law class and that all changed. I was so just fascinated and interested by that class. And I finally felt like I actually wanted to do homework and wanted to raise my hand in the class. So, in most other classes, I was like hiding so that the teacher wouldn't call on me and, like not wanting to do the homework. I was like being tortured. And I didn't feel that way in my immigration law class. So when that class ended, I was like, okay, I think I found the area of law that I want to do, and then I was lucky enough to have a internship as a law clerk at a law firm in their international department where they did do a lot of immigration law. So then I was able to get exposure to the actual, like putting what I learned into the class into, okay, what does that actually mean when you're trying to help a client from another country or, a company from the US that has foreign national employees or whatever, permutation of that it was. So putting those pieces together. And then I really decided that was kind of the work I wanted to do. And I started doing it right out of the gate from law school. So I've been practicing only immigration law for my entire career. I can't
Wow.
imagine doing anything else, and I don't know how to do anything else.
That's amazing. Well, so, it's actually pretty rare. So I can tell you, I've been doing this now for about 15 years, working with law firms. Been in the legal field, I guess, since I could carry books. My dad owns his own firm. And even when I went to law school, after that, starting, a law firm marketing company, I can tell you, even to this day, you're the only attorney I've met so far that can say that they've only worked in immigration from the beginning to even this point. A lot of them, kind of have mixed around between
Yeah,
immigration, a little bit of criminal defense, a little bit of
sure.
estate, family. And I guess it's safe to say that's why your firm has grown so successfully because, I mean, we don't want to say, because I guess ethically we can't say you're an expert in the field, but for all purposes, you are an expert in the field. I mean, 22 years straight out of law school, you've been doing immigration, you've been working in the international scope. I mean, that is, for all purposes, I couldn't say anybody could be more qualified than yourself.
No, thank you.
So,
I like to think so, but I mean, there's a lot of really good attorneys. So,
oh yeah,
but I
but
hope to count myself as one of the very good attorneys in this.
oh no, I mean, we already know you have the accolades, you have the accomplishments. I mean, you're a preeminent AV attorney. I mean, all the awards that you've won. But if we go back to the beginning, right? It was in 2000, I believe 2009, you started your firm. You started off in big firms, leading divisions in business and small, medium immigration fields. What were the biggest lessons you carried from that environment into launching your own firm, which has helped you progress to today?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that I did have those experiences before I started my firm. I remember in the beginning, someone was saying to me, "Well, why don't you just start your own firm right out of school?" And I was like, well, I don't know how to do anything yet. I'm just a baby. I need to learn. I need to get experience under my belt. And then also, like, I don't know how to run a business, right? So not only did I not know how to run a business, but I didn't know how to be a lawyer yet either. I think through my experience working for other firms, obviously I watched the owners of those firms and the managers and stuff and the stuff that they were doing. But more so than that, I just tried to learn my craft and how to become a good immigration attorney and really, just learn as much as I could and get as much experience as I possibly could. So that when I did eventually go out on my own, I felt comfortable in my lawyering skills because then at that point I was like, okay, now I need to learn how to run a business, which, I hate to say it, but 16 years later, I'm still learning every day how to run the business of a law firm. It's not something that comes naturally to me. And it's also not something that I ever learned in school, right? So that's
Oh,
something that I've had to learn over the course of the last 16 years running my firm is, how to run a business. And the business happens to be
the law
in the
firm.
field that I, learned. So that
You know,
it's been definitely an interesting endeavor, but I for sure am so glad that when I did take the leap into being an entrepreneur, that I already at least knew how to be a good immigration attorney. Now, that's not to say that I don't keep learning every day because this field is dynamic, it's ever changing,
yep,
especially now when we have an administration that is very restrictionist on immigration and really heavy duty into making
yeah,
policy changes and doing stuff on immigration even more so. I mean, it's always dynamic, it's always an ever changing field. I've been through several administrations now that I've been an immigration lawyer, so that's been something that we've seen in all the administrations, but it happens to be that the first Trump administration and now this one even more so than the first one, it's like, on steroids. It's like really hardcore, like a lot of stuff
really
happening
bad.
like every day, something new, something different, you know.
Every day.
So it's a constant learning and staying on top of what's happening and making sure that you're taking everything that you've learned over the course of the years, but then also learning new things and expanding on what you're learning. And so, continuing legal education is always so important. And I'm lucky enough to not only be able to attend a lot of those sessions, but to also teach and lead a lot of continuing legal education sessions for different organizations. And So that's also been a really important part of my professional development. And then I think in terms of just like running the firm, not only did I learn from, my prior firms, but for me, I've actually really learned a lot from my husband. My husband is a law firm owner as well.
Oh, nice.
He has a very successful law firm called EPGD Business Law. And when I met him 13 years ago, he had just started the firm. So we were kind of like in that whole trenches together, kind of helping each other.
Yep.
And I've watched him over the course of these years build a really successful firm. And he's kind of like the opposite of me. Like I would definitely say like I'm a better immigration attorney than I am like a businesswoman, right? Like that's the skill where I'm always feeling like, like this is so hard. Like I don't know what I'm doing. Whereas with immigration, I feel confident and, I'm confident in my experience and my knowledge. And he's kind of like the opposite where he's a good lawyer and all of that. Like not to say that he isn't, but he's a very good businessman. And he's
Okay.
kind of always come from that perspective of like running a business. And so he's been actually very helpful to me as a teacher and also as a role model and, also just like a support system but someone that, that comes more naturally to him than it does to me. So it's helpful to have someone like that to be able to ask questions, take
Of
advice,
course.
get help from, just watch what he's
Good
doing and try
balance.
to copy it or, emulate it in a way that makes sense for my firm. So that's also been really helpful to me over the years.
And you touched on a great topic. They don't teach you how to run a business in law school.
No, although I
They
did hear
don't
that
at all.
recently some law schools started doing a little bit more of that type of education, but I think that's a newer trend. When I was in law
It's a
school
newer
in
trend.
the early 2000s, I was in law school from like 2000 to 2003, so it's been a while already. And they didn't even breathe a word about anything like learning how to run a law firm management, any of those skills. That was not, anything that they talked about or even touched on. So yeah, that was
No,
definitely
not at
something that
all.
I had to figure out as I went. And like I said, I'm still figuring it out as I go. And as the firm
Well,
changes,
it's one of those things
you
that
need to
evolve.
learn new things and you need to change in your knowledge of, what works when you have 2 people and what works when you had 4 people doesn't necessarily work when you have 11 people, right? So like, or also as
How to
technology changes.
delegate, how to lay.
What'd you say?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the main concept to that is also, and that's why you are a featured candidate today on our podcast. Not only a featured candidate, you're one of the top guests because being a top performer in the field right now as a firm owner takes so much more than just being a great attorney. And we've already touched on this. You have to be a great businesswoman, right? You have to understand what does it take to make the firm grow beyond being great on the legal side. Especially when you start out in the beginning, you're playing HR, you're playing, the accounting, you're doing the marketing,
Wearing
you're doing
every
everything,
hat.
and then
Yeah.
every hat, and you're balancing it while at the same time being a very high performing
Now I
attorney
think
because
back and I'm like, how did I do all of that with no help in the first
exactly
couple of years, right? Like before I started hiring and really, bringing in people to
more
take some
staff.
of those hats off of my head and wear them themselves. Like I was wearing all the hats. And now when I think back to those times, I'm like, oh no, I don't know how I did that. So if I tried to do that
It's
now,
juggling.
I would probably have a nervous breakdown. I don't think I could. But that also just comes with, the more people you have and the more you start delegating those tasks, the more you can grow. And so it all just kind of compounds on each other, So it's
So tell us the size of the firm now. So you started back in 2009. 16 years later, how many people are in your firm?
So right now we are 11 people, myself,
Wow.
2 associate attorneys, 3 paralegals, 3 what we call law clerks who are basically like law students that work for us. And they're like lawyers in training type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
1 marketing director and 1 administrative coordinator. So that's our team of 11. That number, depending on how many law clerks we have in a given semester, usually fluctuates between, 9 to 11. It's kind of the spot that
Yeah.
we've been in for a couple of years now. It's a nice spot, but it's also like on the cusp of like the next level up where things
Yep.
have to be done differently, right? Because like I said, what works when you have like this many people doesn't necessarily work when you add,
Oh,
as you
yeah.
start growing.
You have to have corporate governance. Like I said, I've worked with firms from, one solo attorney all the way up to 50 attorneys to firms that are nationally recognized that have, at least 1,000 attorneys under their belt. And it's crazy how you look at the transition because they all have a basic fundamental push forward. But you're right. When you have 5 people under your belt, great. When you have 50, right, you have to have corporate governance. You have to have strict SOPs
Yeah.
because you're the owner, but at the end of the day, you can't divide yourself 50 times. You need to have your lieutenants. You need to have your people that are running the shows for different departments
Yeah.
because that's how the firm moves forward. And you guys are in a great position. You're at 11 right now. Okay, consider the law clerks 9, 11, whatever at that point. But you guys are moving into a position now where the firm could be considered, I guess, small to medium size. And medium size going forward, you have to think about multiple locations. So you're no longer just a local firm. You're now talking about regional growth, pressing on and having, a more substantial geolocation spread where it's not just, okay, you guys are based in Coral Gables, you handle probably Miami-Dade, now some probably Broward. When you start hitting that 15, 20 mark, you guys need to start focusing more on, West Palm Beach and all the
Yeah.
surrounding
It's
areas.
interesting because what you're saying is true to an extent, but then also with the advent of the pandemic turning us all into like
Mhm.
very virtual creatures that are doing most things this way instead of sitting together
Virtual.
in a room. But even before that, in our industry, a lot of our clients are not anywhere
Local.
nearby. Like we have clients all over the world. I have clients in almost all 50 states because immigration law is federal law, so we're not
Federal.
restricted to only practicing in Florida. Basically, as long as you're barred in one state, you can practice in
Take
any
clients anywhere.
state. And a lot of times, not even in a state, right? Like it's someone who's in another country and maybe they're trying to come to Florida. Maybe they're trying to go to New York or Texas or California. I can still be their lawyer, right? So that has really allowed us to move beyond kind of our local geographical limitation. And then that just expanded after the pandemic or during and after the pandemic, where people were now super comfortable doing everything over Zoom and online. Whereas before it was like, you know, much less often that we would
In
have
the
a completely
trenches, like on the ground.
a completely virtual relationship with someone that maybe I've never met them in person, and we do their case from start to finish, and I might never meet that person in person, right? Because when they started with us, they were in Germany or Spain or, Argentina. And then when they ended with us, they were in New York, so maybe I never even shook their hand in person, but we have a completely like successful attorney client
Business model. That's
relationship. So
different.
it's been very interesting in that way. I think in terms of marketing and in terms of like where we're doing our marketing, what you're saying is on point because a lot of the marketing that we've been doing is very like a lot of local and regional organizations that I or a member of my team is involved in personally,
Mhm.
right? And so that I've been trying to kind of branch out a little bit more and get into, other markets that maybe physically I'm not in that market, but I'm doing some networking or marketing or advertising there. So yeah.
Well, you touch on a point. So one of the clients that I have is a substantially large immigration firm. They're based in California and they handle similar to yours, international clients, all 50 states. And when we first worked with them, they were doing a lot of, West Coast, focusing on like
Hmm.
Arizona, Nevada, California. And one of the issues that they were seeing as a bottleneck was, hey, we can operate in 50 states. We can operate
Yeah.
internationally, but we see that we're advertising locally.
Hmm.
And a lot of their international or even further out domestic relations, clients were like, let's say they're in Pennsylvania, was based on a network. Like, hey, they
Exactly.
have a client or somebody they know that knows somebody in this country where when they want to expand, one of the most, I guess, valuable assets that we learned to really incorporate for them was that enterprise SEO, that international SEO. Because if you want to advertise on Google or Facebook for all 50 states and have an actual solid footing, it's going to cost an arm and a leg, right? But this is a way where we were able to increase their, how can I say, their footprint, all 50 states, without spending, $5,000-$10,000 per state, every single month, where, a firm that maybe has a $1 million a month budget could handle that. But, a
Right.
smaller firm trying to build up, it's very
Right.
hard.
So that's
And,
been a lot
you've
of
done
the
it successfully.
limitation that I've been facing is that, I don't have the hugest marketing budget to be able to do that. I also don't have unlimited time. So a lot of things that I'm involved in personally, right, that's very time consuming. And so I think it's finding a balance there between, some
Finding a good
paid
balance.
things and some organic things, some that require you to be kind of developing personal relationships and doing stuff in person that's taking your time, and some things that don't, and coming up with like the right combination that, that will help the firm. So, that's obviously a work in progress as we grow and as we start to think about those things. Obviously, the methods that we're using are starting to change.
Of course, and as you continue to grow, they're always going to change, and that's the beauty of being in business. That's the beauty of being in law. Laws will always change, and the business model will always change, and it's kind of like an evolution, right? You evolve into a bigger, stronger presence. Now, as we move into like the segue into really how you've grown, how do you, in your opinion, right? You've generated clients over the years. What's worked best? Referrals, your digital presence, your content marketing, your community outreach, or were there other channels that you were able to really tap into that helped you guys, excel throughout the years?
I think for our firm in particular, it's been doing really good work for our clients and then getting word of mouth referrals from clients to other people they know. Also, just repeat business from the same clients. We have a lot of clients that are companies, right? So they will just have like repeat business over the years. Companies that are hiring foreign nationals or trying to keep their foreign national workforce legal.
Legal.
Those are clients that over and over and over. But also beyond those enterprise level clients, talking about people that are just going through the whole life cycle of immigration, that don't just come to us for one thing, but then we're their lawyer for multiple cases over the years, taking them through the whole journey from, starting as a tourist, then becoming a student, then becoming, going into the US workforce, and maybe starting their own company, maybe then getting a green card, becoming a citizen. Then once they're a citizen, maybe sponsoring some of their
Family
family,
members,
like
or
the whole
yep.
life cycle. And so I have clients that, I'm very proud that I've had since the beginning, basically, that we've kind of taken them through the whole life cycle, and many, many different, cases over the years. So that's also been really good, because if you do a good job, they're going to come back and then they're going to want to work with you again, and they're going to want to refer their friends and family and colleagues and everyone that they know to you. So that's been obviously the most important. The other one for me has been building a lot of just relationships with other synergistic business people, which is funny because you don't always know who's going to be like the best kind of synergy. I mean, there's like the obvious ones, but then it's sometimes there's hidden, treasure in there that you didn't
Of course.
realize that, oh, that's actually a really good connection for me and has turned into a really good source of referrals. But not just like meeting those people and giving them your card, but cultivating
Having a relationship.
relationships over the years so that people not only know you, but they like you and trust you. That's the saying of many networking organizations, that you have to know, like, and trust. And it's true, that
It is
didn't
true.
become a saying for no reason. Like, it's really true. And then, that's been a great way to cultivate business over the years. And so for us, that has been like our main driver of growth. But also, I think just getting exposure, getting out there, giving, speeches, giving lectures, giving seminars, teaching continuing legal education, chairing committees, getting involved in other organizations that have nothing to do with the law. You can put your heart into doing, like, I work a lot with a nonprofit that, is close to my heart because it's for an autoimmune disease that I have. So I got it super involved in that organization. And, even though I don't do that to get clients, I do it because it's, a personal labor of love and like my passion project type of thing. let's get serious. You also can get business that way because you're out there in the
Of
world
course.
talking to this whole other set of people that, it happens to come
Have
up
their
that you're an
life.
immigration lawyer, and then they see that you're doing good work on something unrelated to what you do in your business life, right? But you're doing good work for an organization, being an advocate for them. And so somehow that kind of translates into trust that, you would be a good advocate for their
Oh, yeah.
immigration case, for example. So that's also been an interesting way that, I wasn't even trying to use it for business development and I still don't, but it just kind of naturally happens as well. So I think all of that is really just intermingles into creating kind of your professional persona. And then as you grow the firm, also creating like a persona for the firm, right? Because once it's no longer just like you and it's also
What
other
does the firm
people,
represent?
then you want to have kind of a persona for the whole organization.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, what do you guys represent? What do you guys hold as a
exactly.
mission statement, your beliefs, your principles? I mean, in a similar situation, I don't have an autoimmune disease, but my mom does. And she's suffered from it for many years. And one of the things that, I guess you could say is a passion project is, work very closely with the organizations local to me in Washington, D.C. My mom has lupus. So one of the things is, I've worked with them and never thought I'd ever get a client. Really, it was just to help my mom get her support and really learn more about it because my mom, she suffers from it, but she doesn't know a lot. So a
Right.
lot of the things that I've learned about, like different ways to live your life, eat, operate, things like that, I've learned and generated clients and I've generated really good friends from it and never thought it, obviously didn't go into business, but you're right. As your business continues to grow and, we've been fortunate enough to, hit a certain level where we could say, we're not big business, but we're getting to our medium size where now we have to represent more than just what I believe in and what the actual company believes in. But one of the things I want to segue into is, you do business immigration. Now, do you think that, so when coming out of law school, you said you wanted to work internationally. Do you think working in those larger firms allowed you to really take on that specific niche in immigration law where it's not just the run of the mill deportation cases where now your focus is more on companies, more on business immigration where, I would say probably I don't know, 9 out of 10 attorneys that I know that are in immigration follow the run of the mill cases, and you are that outlier that handles,
Mm.
you could say, extraordinary or the bigger clients that are handling companies.
I
Was that be a reference?
I love that you're saying that. I don't necessarily know that that's true, but that's great. If that's the perception, then that's fantastic. But I do give those attorneys that do the type of cases
Oh,
that
yeah.
I don't handle, basically asylum and deportation defense, a lot of credit because that's really tough work. And right now it's even tougher than
Even
it's
worse
pretty
right
much
now.
ever been. Those are my colleagues that I love and respect and I pass them a lot of business and they're in the trenches more than anyone right now. So I give them a big shout out. But yeah, I've always done kind of your other, what we call you might hear it called business immigration or investor immigration or employment based immigration. It's kind of all of those things. We're dealing with such a diverse clientele. It could be, an entrepreneur. It's just like one guy, right? Because so people are like, oh, you don't do individuals. And I'm like, no, I do. Like, at the end of the day, like it could be one guy who started a company in his country and now he wants to expand it to the US. Basically, it's like just him, or he's like the main
Yeah.
person. So in that regard, it is very individual. But then we also help, larger companies with, big workforces and or multinationals that, are transferring around people or even people that are like artists and entertainers. And a lot of times that's very
Mhm.
individualized because maybe there's not necessarily like a big corporate conglomerate behind that and it's a more individualized basis, but that is the type of immigration law that we've always had like as our sweet spot. We do work a lot with what we call family immigration as well and citizenship cases and all of that, which is basically very individual and very outside of the realm of the other stuff, the business, the companies, all of that. But I did notice it goes like hand in hand, right? And that's why you'll see that most of the immigration attorneys that do the type of immigration that I do or that we do at my firm, also do the family and the naturalization and that type of immigration work, because a lot of times it's the same clients, right? And then it's
Yeah.
taking them kind of like through the next steps of their immigration journey. And like, I don't want to refer that work to someone else after I've cultivated that relationship and that client doesn't want to go to another attorney. You know, if we did our job well, they want to stay with us and have us handle, you know, other aspects of their case. So a lot of times it's the same clientele, even though their case would morph kind of into like something that was business or skill or investment oriented into something that's more an individually based or family oriented. So that's interesting to have kind of the clientele that is morphing from like one side of the coin to the other. That's very interesting. And I did kind of get into that kind of immigration law from my first jobs. You know, the job that I had during law school and then also became a young lawyer with the same firm that I interned with as a law student. I was lucky enough to get a job working for them. And that was primarily the type of immigration law that they handled. And then the second firm I went to after that firm, which was before I started my firm, there was one firm in between, was one of the largest immigration firms in the world that primarily focused on that same type of immigration law as well. So I was getting a good basis in that stuff. And so when I went out on my own, I had to like seriously think about it. Like, okay, now I can do whatever, right? This is my own firm. Like I can make it be whatever I want it to be. Do I want to stay with this stuff that I've learned how to do and that I know I'm have an affinity for and I'm good at, and I've already got lots of clients that I'm taking with me to my new firm, and do just that? Or do I want to do that plus expand into maybe deportation defense, asylum, more humanitarian type of immigration work? And I really thought about it for a while and I decided that I was going to stick with what I already knew for a couple of reasons. I think one was that I was like, oh, I have to learn how to run a business. So I better not also be having to learn, you know, how to do the law also. Like, you know, so it was kind of just like easier to stick with what I knew. But at the same time, I never was really someone that wanted to be like in court or doing something that was just like so dramatically sad that like potentially it would be like a little much emotionally to handle. Now, you know, at the end of the day, all immigration law is very personal. Even if you're helping someone immigrate based on their business or their investment or something like that, at the end of the day, they're picking up their life and they're moving to another country, you know, or something similar to that. And so, you know, I don't think I escaped the emotional aspect of it, but you know, that was my thought process at the time, was like, okay, I don't really want to be in court. I don't really want to deal with something that's like potentially super sad and very emotional, like families being ripped apart, things like that. So that was kind of my thought process, but also just like kind of let's stick with what we know as we learn how to run a business. Let's not also be trying to learn how to be a lawyer, you know? And I kind of just formed kind of the brand around that. And, you know, I've thought a couple times throughout the 16 years that I've been running this firm, like, do I want to expand into that area? And I think every time I thought about it critically and I made the actual decision that no, I was not going to do that, you know, for whatever reason. The closest we got is that we do some humanitarian immigration. And we started doing some of that when in 2021, when Venezuela was designated as a temporary protected status country. I saw an opportunity there because I had so many Venezuelan clients already. Being in South Florida, it's a huge community here. I already had a lot of Venezuelan clients that immediately started asking me about it. And I was like, you know, it's silly of me to not learn that aspect of immigration law. So we did start doing temporary protected status and some like humanitarian parole and limited humanitarian work. I've taken a couple of Violence Against Women Act cases. These also are cases that lend themselves. Yeah, they also lend themselves sometimes to some pro bono work, you know, which all of us have kind of an obligation to do some pro bono hours, you know, so these are good cases that, you know, sometimes lend themselves
It makes a difference.
to pro bono.
I mean, if you can make a difference and, you know, do something in that time, that's always, you know, beneficial.
Yeah.
I mean, your I mean, even though you guys handle business immigration, investor immigration, watching how the administration right now is reacting to immigration statuses. I mean, I think was a couple weeks ago I read that
we've seen a lot more of like the business and the humanitarian intersecting, right? Where, now with these parole programs and these TPSs ending, there's a lot of people that have been gainfully and legally employed for years under these programs and the work permissions that they've gotten through these programs, which are completely valid, working permissions, right? So employers are hiring people that are allowed to work and, great. But now the employers are scrambling to, what do I have to do? Do I have to let these people go? Is there any other way that I can help them stay legally and stay on my workforce? How do I know when I need to terminate them? Like at least with the TPS, but also with the parole, there's been a lot of litigation. There's been a lot of back and forth. It's going to terminate on this date. No, it's stayed by a judge. No, now it's ending on this date. No, now it's on NP. And the not only the actual immigrants that are holding that status and trying to figure out what the hell's going on with their status, but the employers that employ those people are also like super confused and don't know which end is up half the days. So that is something that we're dealing with a lot, like almost every day. Basically, I'm having those conversations with both the immigrant and also the employers of those people. The other thing is that we've been doing a lot of education on like what to do if ICE shows up at your business, because companies are scared. They don't know what to do. There's a lot that they ought to know to be prepared if ICE does show up at your business. That's also been something that we're having a lot of not only conversations with clients, but also doing a lot of education on out in the community. I've been hosting a lot of both in-person and virtual seminars and workshops about that for business owners, for business organizations that have maybe they're industry specific, and it's a lot of like companies that are in the same industry that are in like a business organization together, and I can do like that presentation to the organization, things like that. So that's been something that, then may or may not turn into, a client. So then maybe the company hears that presentation and then they want to hire us to do an internal audit of their I-9s and their E-Verify practices and teach them best practices, help them correct their mistakes, help them be prepared, in the case that they do get audited or God forbid raided, right? So that's kind of the new hot topic. And I think as the administration matures a bit, it's going to become more of a hot topic. I think with the big, beautiful bill funding that's going to kick in October when the fiscal year starts, the dollars for enforcement went up a lot, billions of dollars for enforcement. And a lot of that is going to be, and they've said it, like they're not shy about this. Like they want to go after the businesses because this is their analysis, right? Their view, like without in the employers offering jobs to people that maybe are not properly documented, the undocumented people won't want to be here or stay here. I don't know about that logic. Like to me, something is amiss in that logic, but that's kind of the thinking, right? And so they're going to go into companies and raid companies. I mean, I'm sure you saw last week or the week before the Hyundai plant in Georgia, where they arrested, 450 people. Now it's coming out that a lot of those people were here.
They were brought here to teach them.
Yeah. I mean, it's messed up. Okay. So like, this is totally like.
I mean, Korea is so mad right now because they sent specialists here.
Exactly. So a lot of them were doing something that is actually allowed as a visitor, if as a business visitor. I can't say across the board they were all, legitimately within the scope of their visa and what it allowed. But I know, at least from talking to some of the attorneys that are working on this case or, or involved in this case in some way, that many of them were. So it's scary. It's scary stuff right now. And so like, I'm just trying to help as much as I can. Right. And, if a company can do a workshop with me and then potentially hire our firm to help them get their ducks in a row and get educated and get, organized so that if they do get visited by ICE, they're going to be in the best position they can be, right? Like you're never going to be totally ready for that because it's kind of traumatizing, right? And like it
daunting.
could be really
Yeah.
bad, but at least you can get as well prepared for something like that as possible. And it might just be an audit, right? And in that case, like it's all about your paperwork being in order. Like if your paperwork's not in order, you're going to get fined really
A lot.
steep fines,
Yeah.
potentially putting you at a business level fines, right? So if you could get prepared in advance to minimize that
Right.
potential pain as much as possible, like why wouldn't you want to do it? So that's been kind of a struggle of mine to get people to understand that, like, yeah, you might not get in trouble for this, but if you do, it's going to be so bad that you want to proactively take steps to minimize that in advance of you ever getting in trouble. A lot of people don't just, mentally, they don't wrap their heads around like spending money to do something proactively if they might never get in trouble for it, right? And it's like sometimes it's hard to convince people. So, the seminars give them that little bit of education. Then they go back and they start thinking,
Thinking, if I
maybe
spend X
maybe
amount
we
of dollars
better
with this,
figure
yeah,
out what we're doing here and try to fix our mistakes, because if we do get in trouble, it's going to be really bad. So it's not that I'm trying to scare people, but I'm trying to educate them in a way that then they can make a, a more educated
informed
decision
decision.
about getting themselves prepared for that potential audit or visit from the government. So that's been kind of like a hot area in my firm that started in the first Trump administration because he started ratcheting up that compliance and that enforcement. But then it kind of went away, right? Because then we had the pandemic. They kind of put a pause on all of it. Then the Biden administration, they were still doing it to an extent, but they didn't prioritize that type of enforcement. And also it was still kind of like post-pandemic-y time where it was all like, and they made some kind of special rules that, were flexibilities, blah, blah, blah. So there was some movement on that field, more just like updating employers as to the new ways of doing things since the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, you know. But then with the new Trump administration, it's become again like a super hot topic, and
Oh yeah.
where I see us getting a lot of business in the next couple of years, to be honest with you. Which, okay, like, I like getting new business, but I
Yeah.
also, it's hard because as someone who really actually cares about this stuff and, my whole firm, my firm is mostly immigrants or people from immigrant families with immigrant history. We really actually care very deeply about the whole
It touches home.
topic of immigration just in general and also like what it contributes to this country. And, we put our heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into this work every day. And it's not the easiest work. It's not, you want to have happy business, right? Like you want to be helping people get visas and get work permits and get green cards and get citizenship. So the compliance side is sometimes like kind of sad, right? Because it's either preparing someone for something bad that might happen, or it's if they already get audited or visited by the government, helping them try to get out of that with at
Yeah,
least the least amount of pain as possible. So it's not like the happiest work, but I look at it in the regard that I'm trying to
at least you're there to protect
advocate
them.
and protect, people
You
and
know,
businesses as much as I can. That's kind of goes with our slogan of our firm is advocates for the American dream. And we really take that to heart because we are advocates for our clients and for the American dream in general. And what that means and what this country was founded on. And the members of my team all take that really seriously. It's kind of a prerequisite to work here, so that you have that kind of in here, because
of course,
otherwise this work is really hard. It can be really tedious. It can be really complicated.
you have to have a
You
motivator,
got to have
right?
a
There has to be
motivator, because
something.
otherwise you're going to be like, screw this. It's too hard. Right. And, so yeah, we all take that to heart here. In fact, my longest employee who's been with me the longest is my senior paralegal. She's been with me for over 10 years now, and she's the one that came up with the slogan. And when she ran it by me as an idea, because we were floating a bunch of ideas, right? We were kind of
Yeah,
brainstorming, going back and forth. When that one hit my ears, I felt it here. You know what I mean? And that's how I knew that it was the
yeah.
right slogan for our firm. So, we don't just like say that to be cute. Like we really mean it.
No, it makes sense, and it's more valid now than ever.
Oh yeah.
What they're doing is they're trying to take away. I mean, in my mindset, they're trying to take away the American dream. The American dream, and whether people like it or not, if we look at who's running the administration, he himself, technically, for all purposes, I mean, his family came from immigrants. They came here for the
We all
American
did.
dream.
Newsflash.
We all did.
Unless
We all
unless you're a
did.
Native American, we were all from immigrants at some point. And like
And
Yeah, so it's like
who's to say who deserves
it's
it or
easy to
not?
forget that's how this country was built, basically, and that if you look back, some people don't have to look very back down their line, right? It's them, or it's their parents, or it's their grandparents. But some of us, like myself, it was my great grandparents. That was the generation that immigrated to the U.S. But even though it was not my parents, it was my great grandparents, I still hold
You
those
still relate.
values and I still respect what that meant for them to pick up their life. I have my great grandmother's steamer trunk, which is like this giant trunk, weighs like a
Sure.
bajillion pounds. It's so heavy. Once we put it where it was, I was like, we're not moving that thing because it's so heavy. You can't even move it. But that's how they came to the US. They put all their earthly belongings in this trunk
In that
and it
box.
went on
Yep.
a boat. And they
Uh-huh.
came on a boat, through Ellis Island. I
Yeah.
mean, we've all got the story. It just, it doesn't look the same for everyone. I mean, for my husband, it was his father. His father immigrated him as a young man, in his 20s. Right. So for him, the immigrant story is much, much closer. For some of my employees, it was their parents or themselves. So
Oh,
it's
yeah. I mean, we still see. I mean, I can say like my dad came here when he was, I think, 14.
Mm.
My grandfather came a couple of years before him to like get set up. But for all purposes, I mean, and that is the American dream. You come here for a better life where you can work hard and earn,
yeah,
what you put in the work. And that was the whole point, right? You can come here. It doesn't matter what your class
yeah,
system, black, white, brown, doesn't matter. You can work hard, get an education, make as much money as you want, and provide for your family. And it doesn't matter, what old world
yeah.
tribal philosophy is that's holding you back. And nowadays, it's like, you take that away from people. The question is, are you just taking away an immigration status or are you taking away a future of hope,
Yeah.
right? People's
Definitely
like
think
wants.
damage is being done right now.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think I hope, I really sincerely hope that we're not doing irreparable damage. And I guess time will tell over the course of the next couple of years just how bad and deep
Well,
that damage goes and whether it actually changes the values of what this country was built on. I hope that that's not the case. And I got to stay strong in that hope because it's
that's all we
scary
have.
right now what's happening. So, that's why the
Well,
advocates need to fight, right? Like we're there fighting every day and we'll see.
and that's why we need firms like yours. We need people like you because at the end of the day, it's not just that you're an attorney that represents something bigger, right?
Yeah.
Represents what the future holds for companies, for people, for families, for children, right? A lot of people come here maybe for better healthcare, better education, just a better life as a whole. And that's what you fight
There's so
for.
many
But as
reasons,
we
but
get,
there's also maybe there's no reason. Maybe someone just, I mean, there doesn't have to be this like greater reason, right? But a lot of times there is, and most of the time there is. But it might just be a good opportunity for the person or their business, right? And like that's also a valid
and that should be good enough,
reason.
right?
Yeah. This has been interesting.
Well,
We got a little deeper than I was expecting, but I like it. It was nice.
it's all good. So as we wrap this up, we have one more question, right? So where do you see the future for your firm? Like how much do you want to expand? How big do you want to go? What's the future for you?
It's funny because my husband is of the mindset like he just wants to grow, grow, grow. He wants to have a huge multinational firm eventually, and he's well on his way because he's been growing a lot. I don't think that that's the model. I think my firm is really functions well as a boutique. I think that we'd like to be able to handhold our clients and to really give them individualized service that's not cookie cutter. And I think in immigration in particular, you run the risk of when you become too big, it becoming just like an assembly line, mass production
Mhm.
kind of type of deal, right? Where it's like a factory,
You lose the
like
personal
a
touch.
mill. And I don't ever want my firm to be that, right? Because yeah, those people are making lots of money, but you lose something there. And I think that the main thing that's gratifying about this work is really kind of having that relationship with the clients and really being able to handhold them through a process of something that is life altering in a lot of ways and a lot of times involves them picking up their life and their family's life and moving to another country. And I think that they really benefit a lot from that type of kind of very hands-on work. So I would like
You're
to
their advocate.
grow a little bit more, but I also don't want to grow to the point where we lose that. We're not able to dedicate that time, and it does take on more of like a factory type operation. I don't want to ever
No.
become that. So I like being a boutique. I like that, we can offer that very individualized, very hands-on service with clients. That is, I think, one of the major selling points of my firm and what makes us special. So I don't ever want to grow to the point where I lose that. I'm not sure where that tipping point is, to be honest with you. Like, I'm not sure how big is too big that then you kind of have to turn into a mill. I suspect we could still grow a little bit more and keep it as it is now in terms of the level of personalized and hand-holding service that we're giving clients. But I think there's definitely a point where it's too much. It's not possible anymore. At least not in the way that I want to
Oh
do
yeah,
it.
I
And
mean,
luckily, as the founder and the sole owner of the firm, that's kind of my prerogative. And so I think for me, I'm going to grow until it doesn't feel sustainable
right.
in the way I want it to
Yeah.
be anymore. And then probably, but I think the spot we're in now is a nice spot. It feels good. It feels like, we've grown to the point where we're able to handle more cases and more types of cases and, but not to the point where we're losing that personal
Losing
touch.
touch.
So I
Yeah.
think we're in a good spot right now.
All right. Well, let's say this. If there are perhaps, let's say, companies, investors, just individuals looking to benefit from your services, where can they find you? How can they get in touch with you? Let the audience know, what they need to do to get in touch with your firm.
Absolutely. So email is always the best. So my email is dnero@neroimmigration.com. So it's my first initial and my last name at Nero Immigration. Online, neroimmigration.com. Keep in mind my website's being redesigned, so don't judge me on my old website until the pretty new one is launched. And social media, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we're soon to be on TikTok. My new marketing girl is nice and young, and she is determined to get me on TikTok. I've been afraid up till now because I'm 48 and I'm like, I don't know what TikTok is, but she's half my age. So she's going to put us on TikTok as well. So we're, our social media handles are at Nero Immigration on all platforms, or you can call us.
Awesome. Well, I can say, Deirdre, it's been an honor speaking with you
Thanks.
today. I think what you've done with your firm in the past 16 years is not only inspirational, but just exceptional. I mean, there's a lot of people that have started their own firm and they've been in it 30 years and haven't been able to accomplish half of what you've done. So you're on a great
Thank
trajectory.
you.
I think that personal touch, that intimate feel that you want to give your clients where they know who they stand with and they actually have a real advocate and not just somebody on a piece of paper, even if it's virtual, that, how do I say, the commitment that you give to your clients, really just stands out.
Thank,
And I look forward to your future. I look forward to the firm's future. I'm excited to see your new website and thank you for being on the show.
thank you so much, Sharon. This was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
I enjoyed it as well. Well, you have a great night. Again, guys, if you want to scale your firm, if you're looking to grow, reach out to growthxmarketing.ai. We're here. We've done over 120 million in revenue for our clients combined. And our focus is not just scalability, but sustainability. Really, you have to focus when you're growing a firm, focus more on providing that intimate, in touch services like Deirdre does with her clients, because somewhere along the line, we notice a lot of firms as they scale and get bigger, they lose touch, they lose that feel. And just make sure you stay close to your roots and you stick to what you came here to do in the beginning. Until then, see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX.